Good evening. Tonight, two of the most powerful warships ever built are converging on the waters near Iran. Diplomats from Washington and Tehran are sitting down in Geneva for a third round of talks that senior American officials have privately described as the last real chance before military action. And inside Iran, students are marching on university campuses for the fourth day in a row, many of them chanting slogans that, under Iranian law, carry the death penalty. This is a special report. Tonight, we are going to take you through this story the way it deserves to be told, completely, clearly, and with nothing but confirmed facts from verified sources. No speculation, no exaggeration, just what is actually happening, who said what on the record, and what it means for the United States. Let's begin. To understand today, you have to understand the past 18 months. In June 2025, the United States and Israel conducted joint military strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, a campaign the U.S. military called Operation Midnight Hammer and which Israel called Operation Rising Lion. The targets included Iran's nuclear sites at Natanz, Fordow, and Isfahan. The strikes destroyed roughly two-thirds of Iran's ballistic missile launchers and eliminated somewhere between one-third and one-half of Iran's total ballistic missile stockpile, which before the war was estimated at approximately 2,500 missiles. These figures come from the Critical Threats Project at the American Enterprise Institute, published February 2, 2026. The strikes did significant damage, but they did not end Iran's nuclear ambitions. By late 2025, satellite imagery analyzed by the Institute for Science and International Security showed Iran already beginning to rebuild. At Isfahan, a new roof was constructed over a damaged nuclear site between December 2025 and January 2026. Satellite analysts said it appeared designed to hide activity from overhead observation. At the Parchin and Shahrud military complexes, Iran began reconstructing buildings that house equipment used to produce solid fuel for ballistic missiles. The United States intercepted a shipment of this equipment, called planetary mixers, coming from China in the Indian Ocean in November 2025. In short, Iran was hit hard, and Iran immediately began rebuilding. That is the military context behind the current crisis. The economic context is equally important. Since returning to office in January 2025, President Trump immediately resumed the maximum pressure campaign against Iran, sweeping sanctions designed to cut Iran's oil exports to zero and block its access to the international banking system. In testimony before the Senate Banking Committee, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent stated directly that this campaign worked. He acknowledged that the United States deliberately created a dollar shortage in Iran, triggering runaway inflation. NPR reported on this testimony on February 23, 2026. The numbers tell the story. According to the Peterson Institute for International Economics, Iran's inflation rate reached approximately 40%, with food prices rising nearly 70%. The World Bank projected in October 2025 that Iran's economy would shrink in both 2025 and 2026, with annual inflation rising towards 60%. Iran's currency, which traded at roughly 70 rials to the dollar at the time of the 1979 revolution, had by early 2026 surpassed 1.4 million rials to the dollar, a collapse of roughly 20,000 times its original value over 4 decades. That figure is from Euronews, published January 9, 2026. Iran's GDP, which stood at approximately $600 billion in 2010, had fallen to an estimated $356 billion by 2025. According to Iran International, citing the World Bank, close to 10 million Iranians have fallen into poverty over the past decade, and the share of Iranians living below the international poverty line rose from 20% to 28% between 2011 and 2020. This is the country that is currently trying to negotiate a nuclear deal, a country whose economy has been collapsing for years, whose nuclear program was partially destroyed 8 months ago, and whose streets have been soaked in the blood of its own protesters. The protests that erupted in late December 2025 were initially triggered by Iran's deteriorating economy and surging inflation. They began on December 28, 2025, and spread to all 31 of Iran's provinces. This was confirmed by the UK Parliament's House of Commons Library in a research briefing published February 23, 2026. The Iranian government's response was violent. On January 3rd, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei made a public statement that security forces must put what he called rioters in their place. This was widely reported and is on the record. On January 8th, the government shut off the internet nationwide and blocked international phone calls. Iran went dark for an extended period. NetBlocks, the internet monitoring organization, confirmed Iran remained largely offline as the blackout passed its 102nd hour, reporting that limited connectivity was obscuring the scale of casualties. Iran International published this in January. The death toll from the crackdown is a matter of two confirmed figures, both on the record. Iran's own government stated on January 21st that 3,117 people were killed. This is Iran's official number. The U.S.-based human rights activist news agency, an independent monitoring organization with a verified track record of documenting deaths in previous Iranian crackdowns, confirmed a minimum of 7,015 deaths, including more than 6,500 protesters and 214 security force members. Harana stated its count continues to rise as communications disruptions are overcome. Both figures are confirmed. Both are on the record. The gap between them reflects the communications blackout Iran imposed, which prevented independent verification during the crackdown itself. Iran's own state TV acknowledged what it described as heavy casualties. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, issued a public statement saying he was deeply disturbed by reports of violence and called on Iranian authorities to restore internet access. Tens of thousands of additional people were arrested. Death sentences were handed down in summary proceedings. These facts are confirmed by human rights organizations and multiple news agencies. Against this backdrop, a damaged nuclear program, a collapsing economy, and a regime that just killed thousands of its own citizens, both sides came back to the negotiating table. Round one took place on February 6th in Muscat, Oman. The format was indirect and both sides did not sit in the same room. Oman's Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi served as intermediary. The American delegation was led by Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. No breakthrough was announced. Both sides described it as a starting point. Round two took place on February 17th in Geneva. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi led Tehran's side. After those talks, Araghchi told Iranian state television that both sides had reached broad agreement on guiding principles and that a clear path forward existed. He described the talks as productive. However, on the same day as the Geneva talks, Iran temporarily closed portions of the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway through which roughly 1/5 of all globally traded oil passes, citing a security drill by the Revolutionary Guard. Brent crude oil futures moved on the news. The Strait of Hormuz closure was confirmed by the Associated Press and Al Jazeera on February 17th. Also, on that same day, Supreme Leader Khamenei made a public statement warning the United States. His exact framing was that a warship is a dangerous weapon, but even more dangerous is the weapon capable of sinking it. The statement was a direct reference to the two American aircraft carriers now positioned in the region. Despite Araghchi's positive framing, a February 18th analysis by Axios, citing multiple sources close to the negotiations, reported that there are currently no signs of a breakthrough and that American officials are not optimistic. Round three is today, February 24th in Geneva. Oman's foreign minister confirmed it on February 22nd. Araghchi told CBS News on Sunday that he expected to meet Witkoff and that a good chance remained for a deal. He also confirmed that Iran is still finalizing a written draft proposal and that Tehran's political leadership had not yet signed off on it as of Sunday. A senior U.S. official confirmed to Axios that the Trump administration is waiting for that written Iranian proposal before detailed negotiations can proceed. The official also said the U.S. is open to discussing an interim agreement, a partial deal, as a first step toward a fuller nuclear agreement. Oil prices fell approximately 1% on Monday, February 23rd, as markets responded to news of the third round of talks, interpreting the continuation of diplomacy as a sign that an immediate military strike was not imminent. Goldman Sachs analysts noted that potential sanctions relief for Iran could pose downside risks to oil prices of $5 to $8 per barrel for the fourth quarter of 2026. These figures are from AGBI, published February 24th. Here are the official on-the-record positions of both sides as of this week. The United States position, as stated by Witkoff in a Fox News interview on Saturday, is that Iran must completely halt uranium enrichment. Witkoff said the president is questioning why Iran has not, in his words, capitulated given the military and economic pressure it faces. The U.S. also wants to address Iran's ballistic missile program and its support for regional proxy forces, though American officials have acknowledged the current talks are focused on nuclear issues only. Israel's position, as confirmed by the Critical Threats Project on February 2nd, includes 4 demands: dismantling enrichment capabilities and removing enriched material from Iranian territory, limiting Iran's ballistic missiles to a maximum range of 300 kilometers, ending support for proxy groups, and stopping the violent repression of the Iranian people. Iran's position, as stated repeatedly and publicly by Araghchi, is that enrichment is Iran's sovereign right under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Iran says it will not agree to permanently halt enrichment. The missiles and proxies are not on the table, and Araghchi confirmed this publicly to CBS News on Sunday. There is one important factual development this week. An unspecified Iranian official told Reuters on February 2nd that Iran is willing to accept zero enrichment as part of a deal, a significant shift from Iran's long-standing position. The Critical Threats Project reported this on February 2nd. However, Araghchi's own public statements this week have not confirmed this position shift, creating a gap between what one unnamed official told Reuters and what Iran's foreign minister is saying publicly. There is also a direct contradiction that emerged this week between the two negotiating parties. Araghchi told CBS News on Friday that his American counterparts had not asked for zero enrichment in the latest talks. U.S. officials said the opposite. Both statements are on the record. The contradiction remains unresolved. The United States has assembled the largest concentration of military force in the Middle East since the 2003 Iraq War. Every detail in this section comes from confirmed reporting or official U.S. statements. The USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier arrived in the Middle East on January 26, 2026, confirmed by the U.S. Navy and the Associated Press. It was accompanied by 3 warships. As of January 29th, Iran's own state-affiliated media reported that IRGC Navy vessels, including fast attack craft and missile-launching vessels, deployed in close proximity to the Lincoln in the Arabian Sea. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the U.S. Navy's largest and most advanced aircraft carrier, arrived at the NATO naval base at Suda Bay in Crete, Greece, on Monday, February 23rd. This was visually confirmed and reported by multiple news agencies. The Ford is en route to the region to join the Abraham Lincoln. This deployment marks only the second time 2 American carrier strike groups have been sent to the Middle East simultaneously. The first was in June 2025 for the strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. Trump confirmed the Gerald Ford deployment publicly on February 19th, telling reporters, "In case we don't make a deal, we'll need it." CNN reported this statement on February 16th, citing sources who said the buildup serves a dual purpose: to pressure Tehran during negotiations and to have credible strike options ready if talks fail. The New York Times reported, citing Pentagon officials, that hundreds of American service members have been transferred from Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, with similar troop movements identified at U.S. facilities across Bahrain, Iraq, Syria, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and the United Arab Emirates. U.S. aerial refueling tankers and C-17 Globemaster transport aircraft arrived at Israel's Ben Gurion Airport on February 23rd, confirmed by multiple Israeli media outlets. On Saturday, February 21st, Trump told reporters directly that he is considering limited strikes on Iran. This statement is on the record. U.S. military officials have told multiple outlets that all forces will be ready for action by mid-March. The Wall Street Journal reported that strikes are not imminent at this moment because deployment is still in progress, but that once ready, the option is fully on the table. U.S. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Dan Kane has reportedly warned the White House that shortfalls in certain munitions and limited allied support could increase risks for U.S. troops, and that a military campaign could lead to a prolonged conflict. This was reported by CGTN, citing American officials on February 24th. Iran responded publicly through its Deputy Foreign Minister Kazem Garibabadi, who said at a Geneva conference on Sunday that any American strike, even a limited one, would be treated as an act of aggression and that Iran would retaliate what he called ferociously. Iran's UN mission issued a formal statement reported by the Jerusalem Post that all American bases, facilities, and assets in the region would constitute legitimate targets in the event of an attack. Here is a critical detail that gets lost in the day-to-day coverage of these talks. While Iran negotiates in Geneva, it is simultaneously rebuilding what was destroyed in June. Satellite imagery analyzed by the Institute for Science and International Security, reported by the Alma Research and Education Center on February 19th, shows a major operation underway at Iran's nuclear complex in Isfahan. Iran is sealing the entrances to underground facilities, apparently to protect them from future strikes. A new structure was built between December 2025 and January 2026 at a surface site in Isfahan, constructed with architectural features identical to an existing centrifuge production facility in Karaj. Analysts believe this is designed to hide rotor and bellows production from satellite observation. Simultaneously, satellite imagery reported by the New York Times shows Iran accelerating repairs at its ballistic missile production sites, while making more limited repairs at nuclear facilities, suggesting Iran is prioritizing its missile program. The Critical Threats Project at AEI documented on February 2nd that Israel has formally requested the United States strike Iran's ballistic missile production infrastructure, specifically the Parchin and Sharaud complexes, if America decides to attack Iran in order to limit Iran's ability to retaliate. According to a RAND Corporation analysis published January 23rd in Foreign Policy, Iran stopped reporting the locations of its stockpile of highly enriched uranium after the June 2025 war. This means that even if a nuclear deal is reached and inspectors are allowed back in, locating and verifying all of Iran's enriched material will be a significant challenge. Iran has reportedly reconstituted its medium-range ballistic missile stockpile to pre-war levels. This is confirmed by the Critical Threats Project, February 2nd, 2026. The bottom line, from a military standpoint, 8 months after the June strikes, Iran is further along in its recovery than American and Israeli planners had hoped. That timeline is a significant driver of urgency on both sides. Israel's posture is critical to understanding the full picture. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared in January 2026 that Israel will not allow Iran to reconstitute its missile or nuclear programs. This statement is on the record, confirmed by multiple sources, including Small Wars Journal, February 19, 2026. IDF Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Ayal Zamir traveled to Washington over the first weekend of February for meetings with American defense officials regarding Iran. The Times of Israel confirmed this visit and reported that the IDF has sought sufficient advance warning from the United States before any potential American strikes on Iran, so Israel can prepare its defensive systems and alert its civilian population. The head of Israel's Military Intelligence Directorate, Major General Shlomi Binder, also visited Washington the same week for separate discussions with the U.S. administration. Israeli military readiness is described by Khan, Israel's public broadcaster, as comparable to the level seen just before the June 2025 war, though Khan did not cite specific sources for that characterization. The Times of Israel reported this on February 19th. Netanyahu visited Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in late December 2025 and raised the possibility of another round of strikes on Iran, according to RAND Corporation, citing reporting from that period. 2026 is an election year in Israel. RAND's analysis, published in Foreign Policy on January 23rd, notes that Netanyahu has staked his political standing on guaranteeing security from Iran, and that members of his coalition have already pushed for more decisive action than was taken in June 2025. This is the question every American should be asking tonight. If the Geneva talks collapse and the United States orders military action, here is what verified reporting tells us about the potential consequences. Columbia University's Center on Global Energy Policy, in an analysis updated through February 2026, assessed that if Iran's oil export terminals or production fields are struck, oil prices could spike to between $80 and $100 per barrel in the short term. Current Brent crude prices are approximately $71 per barrel. Goldman Sachs said in its latest analysis that even without a strike, there is at least a $10 per barrel Iran risk premium currently built into oil prices. Iran has confirmed it retains short-range ballistic missiles and launchers capable of targeting U.S. bases in the region. This is confirmed by the Critical Threats Project, February 2, 2026. Iran's proxy network, including Hezbollah in Lebanon, Houthi forces in Yemen, and various militias in Iraq, remains active, though significantly weakened compared to before the June 2025 war. Hezbollah's Secretary General Naim Qassem warned in late January that Hezbollah would not remain neutral if the United States attacked Iran. Lebanese officials described that statement as insufficient and demanded a formal clarification. General Kane's warning to the White House that a military campaign could lead to a prolonged conflict reflects a real assessment within the U.S. military that this is not a simple, clean operation. The Wall Street Journal reported that Trump is considering a tiered approach, initial limited strikes designed to pressure Iran into accepting his terms, with escalating action if Iran does not comply. Tonight in Geneva, the third round of talks continues. Iran has still not delivered its written proposal. The United States is waiting. The window Oman's foreign minister described, the positive push to go the extra mile, is open but closing. The Gerald Ford carrier is moving toward the region. The Abraham Lincoln is already there. American forces across 7 countries in the Middle East have been reinforced. Iran is rebuilding its nuclear and missile programs simultaneously. Its currency is at historic lows. Its people are marching in the streets, and its government is negotiating while threatening ferocious retaliation in the same breath. The next 48 to 72 hours in Geneva will tell us a great deal about which direction this goes. We will keep you informed as events develop. Good evening.